All right, guys, welcome to the behind-the-scenes making of the second part of the Champ Ferguson series. So I'm still figuring out what to do with these videos and how to present them. So if you have any, feedback by the end of this video, I'd be welcome to hear it, because everything, I do with this channel is always looking for improvement. First thing I want to say is just to apologize. I did make mention that this video would be out a lot sooner than this. It should have been up probably a week ago. But if I had any excuses, which are pointless to say, it would be that I was just so excited about jumping into the next episode. It completely slipped my mind to put this up, and I wanted to make time to actually do this narration and add the voiceover to it. Because just uploading the video with the music, I don't know, it wouldn't be very interesting to me to watch. So I figured I can use this as an opportunity to give you some of the behind-the-scenes knowledge that doesn't get brought up either in the live stream or in the video itself. Because otherwise, I guess the knowledge would just go to waste. And if you guys are looking for something extra to watch, and I appreciate you watching these videos. I certainly take a lot of interest in my craft and what I do with these, but for you to do the same, well, that means a lot to me. So thank you for watching. But again, any feedback or comments or things you might have to improve on this sort of thing would be greatly appreciated in the comments section, or you can message me, whatever works for you. So. Starting this out, this is unscripted. This is all from the cuff. So pardon me if I go down some rabbit holes and ramble a bit. I'm just kind of going off what I'm seeing on the screen, like you are, and making comments on it. You saw earlier the courtroom scene. So this episode was one of mine that reused a lot of the same slides. For me, because I'm so picky, I don't know, people have called me a perfectionist when it comes to my artwork and stuff, so maybe that's true. But I try to, if the narration calls for a change of scene, I usually try to do it. I don't really give myself time constraints, at least I haven't so far, which is why the release dates have been so random and they take so long. But yeah, they're like instead of having the same slide for 2 to 3 minutes, I'll probably have one slide for 30 seconds, another one for 30 seconds, maybe a minute tops. Most of my slides usually don't last more than a minute. That's not planned, it's just how the narration works out, how my writing kind of, and how the story kind of comes to fruition. But I certainly try to change the scene because it fits the storyline or it keeps the audience's interest. I don't know, it doesn't. If I'm talking about two different parts of the story and there's the same scene, I want to try to have the animations match the story as much as possible. This scene, this was a point of comedy. If you noticed during the episode of the making, when you were watching the episode. So Preston Huff had been abducted, captured by Champ and taken to this Confederate camp. And as he was leaving, Preston Huff was the son of Andy Huff, or Andrew Huff, and this is leading up to his death. But Preston Huff seems like kind of a smart aleck. Apparently, Champ is on the verge of killing him in front of, those 2 or 3 Confederate soldiers. And when he tells he takes Preston's Huff. He actually, one thing I didn't include in the actual narration because I didn't think it was necessary, but at gunpoint, he forced Preston to wipe his boots clean. Like Champ was sitting on his horse, and before he let Preston go, he actually made Preston clean his boots, like spit shine his boots for him. But I guess Preston, being a kind of a smart aleck, when Champ told him to go home and stay there for the rest of the war, I guess that was his conditions. He was released on parole from the Confederates. He was obviously ordered not to fight anymore. And when Champ told him, okay, well, I have to let you go, but you better go home and not fight anymore, Preston's response was, well, I'll try, but it will be very hard to do. A man is bound to travel about sometimes. So I just thought that was a very kind of a wise ass, excuse my French, answer when a guy's pointing a gun at you, for you to have that kind of daring bravado to say something like that. So if you listen again, yeah, I laughed at Preston Ferguson's wiseacreness That's not even a word. Okay, Davy Crockett. Yeah, so I grew. I was a '90s kid. I was born in '89. I grew up watching Disney and the old Davy Crockett movies. I really loved those as a kid, to the point where my parents actually bought me and my brother some cap guns that resembled, Civil War. I don't know if it was like an Enfield rifle or something, but we had cap guns that looked like 19th century rifles and pistols, and we would go out in the woods and play Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone, and we loved those movies when Disney came out with them. I mean, they predated my birth, but when we finally got around to watching them, but yeah, I love those Davy Crockett movies. So I was really intrigued by the Crockett family's indirect involvement, I guess, with this story. I couldn't find anything where, Champ had any sort of direct confrontations or interactions with Crockett family members, but rest assured the Crockett family was probably alive and well at the time in the same region of Tennessee, if they hadn't moved to Texas or something. A lot of folks, it seemed like, moved to Texas after the war. But then, Crockett died at the Battle of the Alamo, if I remember correctly. And then Alvin York, the history of Alvin York in here, I thought that was, again, kind of neat that he tied into this story. And maybe I'll do an episode on Alvin eventually. He was one of the guys I first wanted to maybe do if I ever did an episode on heroic actions. I thought his story was very fascinating, really. He was what do we call him? A conscientious objector when he enlisted in the military. Alvin York was, and him, he ended up serving his country honorably, and he had to kill, but apparently he did so begrudgingly when he had to kill any German soldiers who were trying to kill him or his men. But very interesting story there. You'll notice that I don't always use the same images. Sometimes I end up finding, like for this one right here with Andrew Huff, the picture of the man leaning against the tree versus this image of the man kind of laying prone on the ground with the woman. Yeah, so sometimes it takes longer because I'm not even sure what I'm doing, and I end up changing it because I think I find something that looks better. The other thing you might have just noticed is me drawing the grass, those individual grass blades that I do. I honestly don't know how much attention people pay, but for me, I think the details are very important to the animations. I think that they add some, whether you notice it or not, those little slight details, I think, if they weren't there, I think it would be noticed, if that makes sense. So, yeah, if you see me giving a lot of attention to small details, I don't know, it's you don't know what the end result would be. But for me, I do tend to put a lot of attention towards small details, even though they may go unnoticed, because I feel like that people might notice if I didn't include those details, rather, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's another thing that just takes me a while with the animations, unfortunately, is just my obsession with small details. So for what it's worth, those do add a considerable amount of time, I guess, to the whole process. It adds those little seconds, those minutes add up to hours. If you've noticed the clouds, I use a kind of a posterizing effect. That's the word for it. It's posterize. It just gives kind of a blockish effect to the colors. But with the clouds that I use, I never alter the clouds except to make them black and white and maybe blur them out a bit to give it that kind of, the camera blur. But the clouds, it's interesting to me because I don't intend these animations to have a realistic look to them per se. I want them to look like animations, but somehow the clouds being unaltered gives them more of a realistic appeal. This I thought was interesting. I intentionally left this in knowing I was doing this behind the scenes. Sometimes I won't always include my hunt for photos on Google Images or something, but when I use Google Earth, I think I don't know, that's just me. I want accuracy. So the Google image search that you just saw, I was perusing Kentucky and I was looking for a railroad crossing. I tried to pinpoint the location where General Morgan and his men actually captured the train, and then where it might have exploded on the rail line on its way to Nashville. So between Bowling Green and Nashville, I found this road crossing right here in Kentucky. So attention to detail, right? So like I said before, I get sticklery with details, and I figure, well, if I'm looking for a railroad crossing anywhere, I might as well look in Kentucky itself. So just so you know, yeah, those images, or most of these images, are actually taken from Kentucky. They're not just random forests or roads or something. I don't know if anybody would ever question that, but you're hearing it first now. These images are taken from the locations themselves, and I of course try to keep everything in the photo accurate to the timeline. I ended up, if you watched the first episode of Champ Ferguson that I ever made, the one that I'd never posted because I ended up just doing the blimp episode first, based on off of both Richard's suggestion and my own kind of intuition about which episode I should launch the channel with. You'll notice that the Hiram Markham hiding in the cornfield, that was actually Champ Ferguson's cabin in the first episode that I ever made, but I ended up using the same image for that one just because it made sense. So I needed that distance in between the cornfield and his house. That's what it made sense to me. And this cabin right here, actually, so if you remember from the first episode, the opening scene where Elijah Koger is being attacked by Champ and his men at his cabin. The cabin in the distance you're seeing right there is actually the same cabin from a different angle. It's actually the Appomattox courthouse, or a courthouse from Appomattox, in a Civil War kind of memorial park. I believe it's in Virginia. So this one, obviously not in Kentucky. But that was one cabin that I was able to find that had consistent photos from different angles, because my concern there was making sure that the cabin remained consistent, even though it ends up being really small and you probably can't even tell the difference anyway. But yeah, that image of the two soldiers on the road watching that cabin that you see pictured there is the exact same cabin that was pictured in the first episode with Elijah Koger when he's like running away from his house and being shot at. The changes that you're seeing here from the first episode, so this is artwork from the original episode, the unreleased one, and there was another woman standing in the frame with this. This is Zachary's daughter. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but there was another woman standing on the porch. But every reference I read said that she was on the porch by herself. There was no indication given as to what type of dog this girl had, so I looked at farm dogs from the 19th century, and I said, okay, what's the most common type of farm dog that would be found in Tennessee, in Kentucky? And a collie, as you see there, a border collie, or a farm collie, I don't know what the actual term is, but a collie seemed to be the most accurate dog. So as opposed to a bloodhound or any other type of dog, but like I said, for details and accuracy, so that's a collie. And if you listen to the actual episode and the audio, you hear a dog barking. Well, that's a collie. I found audio of a collie barking. So I don't know who's gonna, maybe I get one person who owns a collie who's like, wait a minute, that's not the right dog bark. If I used a different type of dog. So there's the cabin again from a different angle. Elijah Koger's cabin / the Appomattox courthouse. Let's see if I remove the chimney. Oh, I do. Okay, I removed the chimney because it didn't make sense to me for a rural Tennessee cabin to have two chimneys. So I removed one of the chimneys. But yeah, so that's the same cabin that was supposed to be Elijah Koger's house, but I'm just reusing the same images for consistency across the story. I just had to add the barn there, as you see in the back. Speaking of details, the trees that you see on the sides here, so the two little groves of trees, one near the house and then one in front of the house there, that's actually the same silhouette of trees. But of course I am obsessed I'm worried that somebody's going to notice, or they're going to be distracted by the fact that they see two trees that look the same, even though they are the same, but I try to make them look different so that maybe sticking with realism. But yeah, just so you know, I'm obsessed with altering things to make sure that they never look the same. The snow here was kind of an issue when I rendered the video. The snow was maybe falling too fast. Sometimes you just have issues with the actual rendering process. But and then I'm doing slow motion animation. So sometimes I don't want the weather to be moving faster than the actual image itself because everybody's standing still in it. Man, I am rambling at this point, aren't I? Yeah, this video obviously took me a lot longer to make, so thus the how it's made video is considerably longer. I slowed the speed down just a bit. I wasn't sure how quick these. Yeah, there you go. I'm Google imaging some pictures. it was interesting to me to find the actual tombstones of these guys who were killed in the story. Maybe at some point with the challenge coins, what I was kind of thinking of, and you guys let me know if you think this is a good idea or not. I thought maybe kind of like a worldwide scavenger hunt. So obviously, we're going to get more people on board with this, and I don't expect everybody to be traveling. But for those folks that live nearby these monuments or these locations or these battle sites, I thought it would be cool to take our challenge coins and travel to those locations, take a selfie or take a picture with your coin in the location, or put it on top of the tombstone as like a tribute, take a picture of it. I don't know. It's something common in the military for military folks to go visit a gravesite, and you actually leave a penny or a quarter or a dime or a certain type of coin on top of the gravestone as an indication that somebody came there to visit that grave. You're not supposed to remove any coins if you find them. I don't know if anybody does that, but so it kind of ties in with existing military culture. So just an idea I had, but since those tombstones actually exist and these grave sites and things exist, I thought it'd be kind of neat to get some of the folks who watch the videos to go and take some photos, and we could share them on Instagram or on Patreon or something. But just another idea I had. So this is the scene where Moses wakes up, and Elam Huddleston and Moses Huddleston and their cousin David are in the cabin, and Champ ends up outside. And the snow too. Kentucky doesn't really get a lot of snowfall, so sticking with accuracy. Initially, I hadn't when I did the audio. I actually had to change the audio. For those of you that may have listened to the audio first, maybe a couple weeks ago, I actually had to change the audio because I had put Elam Huddleston and his death it was winter. It was the 1st of January. It was the middle of winter. And I put like owls hooting and crickets chirping and stuff because it was nighttime, but I completely neglected to acknowledge that it was done during the winter. So I actually went back and I changed the audio. I removed any animals that didn't belong in a winter setting. I did find the great horned owls in Kentucky still hoot during the winter, so I went back and I added the owl noises. So I'm again stickler for details, but I ended up changing the audio to make it sound colder, kind of a dry wind with some just make it sound like a winter environment. But yeah, I didn't know that initially, but then when I started getting to this part of the story in the animations, I realized that I have to do maybe some light snowfall. Honestly, the snowfall could be a little bit heavier than what I'm showing it, or even lighter. So I tried to just be reasonable about it, because I'm not sure. I was expecting to maybe get some Kentuckians in there and saying, "Hey, we don't get that kind of snow here," or I don't know what. Just another maybe possibly interesting detail about the animation process. This one I was happy with how this one turned out. Another light snowfall on the ground on a farm in Tennessee, Kentucky area. But just I'm slowly improving on my ability to change the way faces look if I'm using original images from, those are the original image of Champ's face, but able to, he can't just have the same blank expression that he had when he took the photograph. So trying to add some emotion to his face, which coincides with the actual narration and the story. I can't imagine him being so placid when he's killing somebody, so I try to put some anger on his face. Facial hair for Champ Ferguson, man. Most people probably wouldn't even notice it, so I'm going to curse all of you guys with the knowledge of Champ's facial hair, I guess. I didn't know if he had a beard. The pictures he took, during his court hearings, right before his execution, were all clean shaven, so he could have been a bearded guy. I did have him wearing a beard, when he was kind of hunting in the mountains in the first episode, but I didn't know if it was appropriate. It doesn't make sense to me now that a guy like that would probably be shaving that often, but I didn't know. So I kept him clean shaven, and I thought maybe it kind of added some distinguishing feature to his face versus some of the other guys who maybe had beards. So Champ was more recognizable, and I don't know if a clean shaven face makes somebody look more sadistic. Not that I was intending to make Champ look any more mean than he might have been, but even the facial hair came into play in terms of how long did it take between this image and this image for him to grow out a mustache? Would that even be appropriate? Is someone going to watch this and be like, hey, wait a minute, it's only been 1 month. You can't grow a mustache that big in 1 month. I'm curious what people actually notice when they watch these, if anything. But again, the details are something that just constantly haunts me as I go back and I rewatch what I did, and I'm like, you know what, I need to change that because that's inaccurate, or that looks like something somebody might be distracted by, and they might stop paying attention to the story because they're worried about little minute details. So this is a reuse of the first episode. I wasn't as happy with this one. I wanted to maybe do something a little more graphic. I mean, because they got all those guys off the train and they slaughtered them. But the image of a bunch of guys dressed in Union clothing stopping a train, it was just a simpler image. I was taking long enough with this episode as it was, so I didn't bother redoing that image, and I just reused the one I had originally done. Yeah, included. So this is Colonel Stoker, and then that was John Morgan. So then, if you notice, I was actually upset by that. If you notice in the actual episode when I did that, that General Morgan animation actually cuts out because it didn't fade out. So I don't know. Most people probably didn't notice that, but yeah, there's always something that goes wrong in editing or post-production that I don't catch before I upload the video, and then it's permanently on YouTube and I can't change it, and so be it. But yeah, I noticed that instead of just staying with the slides, especially if I'm talking about like a person or something that isn't actually present in the slide itself, I've done it in previous videos, like the Nazi videos. But yeah, if I have an image of that person, adding him to the front of the slide so you get a visual on what that person looked like. I don't know if it's helpful to the story, but I thought it was important to include those. That's why I went back and did that. Even after I'd already finished those animations, it occurred to me that maybe I should go back and throw those Colonel Stoker and then Champ Ferguson sitting in the chair back on top of the images. It was hard finding a picture of a guy using one of those cameras. I probably could have just found an old 19th century tintype camera with a cloth on it, or I could have just pieced together a few different pictures, but in order to save time, I was really trying to find a picture of a guy using a camera like that, and luckily I did. And the lighting in this shot is completely wrong. You notice how the light's coming in from the window behind, and I'm not much of a photographer, but I do know that probably wouldn't make for a good photo, having all that light coming in from the back of the two subjects instead of the front. But yeah, one thing I just had to let slide due to the amount of time all this was taking. Your forests, yeah, like you see here, I just kind of input some extra trees because I use like blurring and kind of to create that camera depth. I use blurring, but if you blur and you don't kind of you put some trees back in the front ground, it looks weird. So yeah, forests are often some of the more difficult slides to animate, simply because of the amount of foliage and the way that leaves and all that individual little erasing and editing and things you have to do to make it look when you blur it and you do the layering. There's more grass more grass animation. But this I don't know. I couldn't pinpoint. It's funny, all the history that we have. It was hard to pinpoint where the actual Battle of Saltville took place. I was hoping to find pictures that people had taken since of the hill, or the tree line, or this grassy field right here. So this was just a guess on my part. But those are the Appalachian Mountains near Saltville. This picture, I think, was used for advertised property that was being sold. It looked appropriate for the image. So, and I ended up flipping it, sideways. But I don't know if any of that's even interesting anymore. Maybe I should script these things and find more interesting things to talk about. Just doing a run through. Yeah, I might have said this earlier. I always, once I looked at these things when they were much faster, I always thought maybe it was a little bit not as interesting when you watch them as slowly. So you'll know, all these. So this was the original college building, the Henry and Emory College. It was funny when I read the book because it said Emory. What did it say? There was a hall, I can't remember the name of the hall, not Emory Hall, but This building has actually since been torn down, and they built a dorm building over top of it. And so I think in the book I was reading, Brian McKnight's book, when he references the building that this actually took place in, I don't know if he was maybe confused or it just got lost in translation, but that building is actually a different one. But that was luckily that was like the one photo I was able to find of the original building. It was a college administrative building that had been converted into a hospital, and I was lucky to find that one image. But the building that currently stands on its foundation is not the original building. I guess it was torn down. But if you notice in the original image, I was actually interested, just considering what life was like in the 1860s. All the windows in that building were open. So I think of a time when there's no air conditioning, and how hot and humid and just gross everybody must have felt, not having central heating or cooling during that time frame. But yeah, I thought it was interesting when you look on the outside of the building, all the windows are hanging open, just to welcome in a cool breeze. So I can't imagine having to live through, people didn't know what they were missing, but yeah, air conditioning certainly brings a great amount of comfort to us. It's funny what you think of when you make these videos, but yeah, so you see all the windows are open. I ended up editing it, but still, yeah, a lot of open windows. I just had to erase, there was a bunch of guys hanging out of the windows and stuff for the original photo, and they didn't belong there. They weren't there when Champ was there, so. I think the photo I took, I think it might have been from a film or something, but this image of the hospital, another interesting note in my ability to animate something, just erasing the foreground there and then making that move and trying to make it as imperceptible as possible that it's just part of the room is actually moving instead of the camera actually moving. So if you didn't notice it, then I guess I did my job right. And so the newspapers, yeah, I was, as I kind of mentioned in the story, I do try to stay unbiased in the telling of these stories. So finding newspapers in terms of addressing propaganda and just being as unbiased as possible, yeah, it was clearly evident in the newspaper clippings that I was finding, the front page papers, that the papers were clearly biased towards the Union, at least the ones I could find. I didn't find any Confederate papers. So I tried to at least find two papers, or the one regarding General Lee that wasn't basically condemning General Lee in the headline, and just stayed unbiased. So there was that little blurb. Yeah, this one I was a little disappointed because I actually found a picture of Duvall. Was it not Bug Duvall, but John Hurt was the other guy. His last name was Duvall, but the guy who's standing and shooting right now, whose face you just saw me editing. But then when I actually did the final animation, like as you see right here, you can't even see his face. He's so far away. So sometimes it's like all that work was for nothing. You never know, though. You never know. So I guess I'll learn eventually what I need to spend time on. But it's weird how I put these images together, and even though I change the graphics a little bit, like the image to make it more animated looking, and I do use that posterizing effect. It's funny what still at a distance, when something is made really small, it still almost looks very identifiable, like a face. You can still identify a face from a distance. So I was a little disappointed that Duvall's face didn't end up making it kind of front and center, but then again, it just didn't seem to work for the actual scene. And here's another example of me starting on one image and then completely just throwing it out the window because it didn't work for what I needed it to. So then I ended up, so this is the same cabin that I've already used. This was Hiram Markham's cabin. I just erased the fence line to try and make it look a little bit different, added the tree there for the animation. But yeah, so shamelessly reusing the same cabin. That's, now it's Champ's cabin in Tennessee, White County. But yeah, I work with what I have. What are you gonna do? And then making it look like it was at night. That was another thing that I missed in the original animation, as you'll notice, was the time that they actually arrested him was, just after midnight. So having to make everything look like it was done at night, change the lighting and everything. and then finding a different prison cell. It didn't make sense to me to use this. So this was from the original video, but yeah, just, it didn't make sense for me to have Champ sitting in the exact same prison cell. Not all prison cells could look the same, right? So this was just one that I'd found for the original video that seemed to be appropriate for the time setting and gave the impression that he's now imprisoned at a different location. Henry Wurz, yeah. So this was the other one. I don't have much to say on Henry Wurz, but it was actually interesting to me because briefly here, you're going to see General Wheeler. So that's the president. But General Wheeler, this guy, General Wheeler, actually showed up for Champ's court appearance, and he actually got his butt kicked. Apparently, there was a Union officer who had some beef with General Wheeler, and so he found General Wheeler in his quarters near Champ's, in Nashville, and just beat the crap out of him, I guess. So General Wheeler actually showed up to the court hearing, all like in bandages and all banged up, and it actually rendered some sympathy from the audience because he looked so mutilated. But apparently, a Union officer had just beat him up in his room for some sort of conflict that had started during the war. They'd fought each other, and he thought that maybe he fought dirty or something. But yeah, I thought it was just something interesting I didn't feel like was necessary to the story. But yeah, so General Wheeler showed up to the courtroom in defense of Champ. But unfortunately, like I said in the story, he couldn't verify any of Champ's conventional military service outside of the time that he spent with him. So in terms of justifying Champ's guerrilla activities, but yeah, so I guess showing up to the courtroom all beat up, kind of like, was it the Liar Liar, when Jim Carrey beats himself up to try and get some sympathy. Same kind of story, which I thought, again, was just interesting. Yeah, it looks so. Champ Ferguson's grave, it looks like the original limestone that was the slab, it looks like it broke. I don't know if somebody vandalized it. I could imagine that happening. Somebody who just wanted to just take their anger out on his gravesite. So it looks like at some point somebody's replaced his gravestone, and that's why you have two gravestones there, and I ended up wanting to display the original one. So I erased the other one. I put the original, what looked like the original gravestone on the front side. So it's not true to the current tombstone. But for me, I don't know. I just felt like showing the original one was more in line with the actual story and what I'm trying to remember the author's name. But what the gentleman was speaking about when regarding whether Champ was actually buried there or not. So, but that was the original tombstone, as far as I'm aware. But then again, I left in kind of the fence line and then the actual, the current modern day grave site, what it looks like. So here you go. Here is the full run through of the animations from start to finish, which, for me, all the work I guess I put into it looks like it just looks really unimpressive when it's played this quickly, I guess. But thank you for watching in any case. I'm glad you guys, if you enjoyed the video, I'm glad you did. If you left me some feedback on it, thank you for that. And thank you for watching this How It Was Made video. Admittedly, maybe I should prepare something because I was kind of running out, or maybe I just need to play the video faster because now we're coming on 35 minutes here, and there was just some points there where I didn't have much to say. So thanks for sticking with it. Maybe the music helps. This was, overall for me, this was a very tragic story. A lot of people are going to take sides on it, and they're going to have an opinion about Champ one way or the other, but I found this to be a very sad story overall, both for American history and just human history in general. But very sad how it all worked out. As my tribute to you guys, so I do put in some work for the credits to give you guys your dues. So thank you again for your support. It means the world to me, really. And like I'm honest when I say that it's probably what's going to allow me to keep doing this moving forward. So thank you guys for your incredible support. And again, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback for this video, by all means, I welcome you to leave that in the comment section below. Until the next episode, guys, have a good week. Take care of yourselves, and I look forward to engaging with you in the comment section and on future videos.